We didn't know where it had come from. We didn't care. We got it on the cheap for the construction of our new house. They'd claimed it was a loamy soil, and that's all we cared about. Good for house foundations and whatnot. A guy with a dump trunk that looks like it's from the 1960s shows up and unloads dirt onto our land. The truck is faded, chipped, and rust-pimpled. Back of the truck is rigged with old stakes of wood. The guy has a mustache that looks like two fat, hairy worms through the distorted glass. We don't talk to him. We leave his money in our mailbox for when he returns with more dirt. Almost a year later, Nikki and I and the kids have just moved in. New house. We're all sitting on the couch watching TV. Cable and internet just installed. Something attracts our attention on the little shelf to the right above the TV. Something up there totters and starts to slide. The urn that contains the ashes of Nikki's sister shatters on the ground. We sweep up the ashes. Nikki cries. The kids go to their rooms. Did the constructors build the house level? We should get someone to come out and double check. The kids are in their rooms. An hour or two passes. I rub Nikki's feet. It gets close to lunch. It's Sunday. I've got pasta and vegetarian meatballs going. The kids are in their rooms. We hope, doing homework so that we can all watch TV again later. I'm tasting the 3-cheese tomato sauce that's been simmering, blowing on it and tasting, when we hear a pounding racket on the other side of the house. I hit the handle of the pot and the tomato sauce flies up on my chest. It burns like fire. It drips down slowly like partly coagulated blood filled with 3-cheese pus. There's that pounding on the other side of the house. Nikki's up off the couch. You okay? Yeah, I say. I don't think I was burned too bad. Sure, it saved me. Before I finished answering, Nikki's running to go check on the kids. A couple of seconds later, Nikki is shouting. I don't hear any of the kids other than that pounding. Nikki yells for Layla to open up. The kids should all be in their rooms. Our kids are 5, 8, and 13. I run out of the kitchen, around the corner, and down the hall. While someone pounds behind a door down the hall, my heart pounds on the other side of my soaked, burned chest. I get to Layla's room where Nikki is, where that racket is coming from. Nikki is trying to open the door. He's already tried to unlock it with the room key. It wasn't locked, he said. The beating stops when I move to help Nikki. When we do, no one is inside. We check under her bed. We pull out a zoo of teddy bears from her open closet. Layla, our 5-year-old, is gone from her room. Nikki had just stopped crying about his sister's ashes, but now there are fresh tears. Like a living ink stain spreads out inside of me. It spreads as we go to each room. We find that all of our children are missing. But there are common themes. Open windows with dirt on each windowsill. We hadn't noticed with Layla's room because the curtains had been in the way. We hear something scraping over the floor back where we had come from. When we get to the kitchen and the living room, we find chairs propped against the front and back doors. Then we hear something like muffled screams or cries outside, like mouths being covered with hands. Nikki and I are panting and shouting our throats out as we try to budge a chair at the front door. It feels like it's always been there, like it's always been part of this newly constructed house. We split up, one at each door. We try to pull loose either chair. The front and back doors are wedged shut with chairs that will not move. We sprint around to the windows. The ones around the living room and the kitchen are all jammed, and we can't open any of the bedroom doors. Memories we've had with Layla, Emily, and Zoe flash through my mind. I don't want to know what Nikki is thinking. I'm more afraid than I've ever been. A hacking, splitting noise startles me so much that I release my grip on the chair at the front door and fall down. I get up and follow the noise until I can see Nikki has an axe. One I'd forgotten about that had still been packed away. He has it, and he's going to work on the chair at the back door with great big grunts. I I can no longer hear the muffled cries outside. Running over to Nikki, I slide across the linoleum of the kitchen. I almost fall again before I get there. I dive into the weakened chair and it collapses under my weight. I get up coughing, somehow not impaled by any pieces of wood. Nikki opens the door. Air and sunlight, a breeze and birds and squirrels. Should be an ordinary, beautiful day. We rush out the back. We don't see the children out there, but their muffled cries had come from the front, hadn't they? The backyard gate about gets torn off of its hinges as Nikki and I barrel ahead. I keep thinking we're too late. And then we see them. They're out there, about halfway between our house and the street, playing in the dirt. That dirt should be covered in grass sod. The squares of grass had been torn aside and stacked up. Layla, Emily, and Zoe, ages 5, 8, and 13, are all playing together in the dirt. It's strange to see a 13-year-old playing with her younger siblings. Even stranger to see a 13-year-old playing in the dirt. Nikki screams, reaches out, and grabs my tomato sauce-soaked shirt so tightly that I can feel his nails digged into my burned flesh. I see what he's seeing. Before, they'd had their backs to us. But now Layla and Zoe have turned around. As they play in the dirt, their eyes are shut. They stay shut. Emily, our middle child, is still facing the street. I notice another thing. Their bodies don't look like they're moving on their own. It's like someone else is moving them. Nikki pulls me as he runs, until I'm snapped out of my stupor. We're expecting the kind of struggle we'd had with the chairs. There are no axes we can use here, though. These are our children. They have a pulse. They're breathing. Nikki and I try to move our children, who dance in our arms. Something has them and won't let them go. Something strong. It smells foul. My initial thought is that one of our kids has soiled themselves, but it doesn't smell like that. We struggle, afraid to use too much force and afraid to use too little. Layla murmurs vomit, her eyes still closed. It covers her like the bib of tomato sauce on my shirt. Only after a passing car honks are the children released. Nikki and I try to push them together so they don't get hurt from falling. Parental instinct. Later, our children sleep into the night, but by then we are staying in a hotel. They wake up muddled. They remember nothing after going to their rooms. Nikki and I call around as one night at the hotel stretches into a week. Like before we'd bought it, we didn't get much info about the history of our land. But thinking about how our kids had been playing, or forced to play, in the dirt of our yard, I recall the creepiness of the guy who had delivered it. We try dialing the number of our dirt guy. It had been someone who had responded to our request for various constructive services in our area. We hadn't even asked for the dirt on that forum, but they'd replied with such a cheap price. We had no idea at the time whether they were an established company or just a random person in our area with a lot of dirt. When we call, we get the message that the number has been disconnected. So we go back and view the posting history of our dirt guy on the forum they replied on. They don't have any other posts. But when we check their profile, we see this line, and only this line in their profile box. The worms crawl in, the worms crawl out. I'd never heard it, but Nikki says it sounds familiar, so we look it up. It's from the hearse song, which first became popular during World War I. Seems like no one knows who came up with it. After that, we do a search of local cemeteries. We find an article about a nearby cemetery that decades back had been discontinued, and the graves all moved because someone kept digging up and playing with the corpses. When we search the disconnected phone number for our dirt guy, we find that the number had at one time belonged to the defunct cemetery. Our children are all right, but it worries us to no end when we wonder what might happen if we stay. Nikki and I are debating whether to put our house on the market or bulldoze it and go into debt.